Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to session 2 of WAQF, a game changer. My name is Faraz Patel, and I'm in the esteemed company of none other than Zainul Kaji from WAQF, South Africa. Uncle Zainul, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh again for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and thank you again for having me on your program.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I think let's look at terminologies within WAQF. So, I mean, one would say, okay, it's straightforward terminology, it's WAQF, and we take it from there, but it's broken down into broader definitions. Talk to us about that.
Okay, so first of all, we have gone through the word WAQF itself.
Yes.
Okay, so WAQF is the dedication of an asset and the dedication of its fruit. Endowment of the asset and dedication of its fruit. So there's certain words that are connected to the word WAQF. So the WAQF is the person who makes the donation. Okay, so with the WAQF could be the male, the female, the brother, the sister, the father, the mother. It could be male or female. Sure. The WAQF or WAQIFA. The second one is the mutawalli. So these are like a component of a WAQF. What makes up the WAQF and who are the parties involved in the WAQF. So once the donor makes the WAQF as the WAQF, there is also a mutawalli, a trustee that is entrusted with the caretaking and the oversight and the management of that particular WAQF, because the asset has to be managed somehow or the other. Thirdly, there must be the asset itself, the mawquf.
Yes.
Okay, that's the asset itself.
Which in English definition we call a corpus.
The corpus
yes,
of the WAQF would be called the mawquf, and that could be literally any asset, movable or immovable. And that's an important point that we can go delve into the movable and immovable. And then we have the mawquf alay, which are the beneficiaries. So somebody is benefiting out of the WAQF itself, out of the corpus. So the corpus being the asset, and that is the asset that has been endowed or that has been made the WAQF, and the fruits of it is distributed to the beneficiaries. How that is done can also be discussed. And then we have a very important document called the waqfiyya.
Right.
The waqfiyya is the deed, the trust deed, or some people call it the waqf nama, which in some countries is called as well. And that document will specify the full details, the niyyah that you have to make, the purpose for which you are creating this WAQF, the terms and conditions, how much should be spent on the management of the WAQF, what is allowed, what is not allowed, what should happen to the asset should there be a problem, a failure or whatever. Some of these waqfiyas could be, as thick as a book, and I've seen some of the waqfiyas of some of the sultans during the Ottoman Empire, and then these documents make up gives guidance to the mutawallis and the trustees for generations to come as to what should happen to this WAQF, how it should be spent, etc.
Sure. Uncle Zainul, I think a whole range of questions just to cover this segment of session 2. I mean, so here we've got somebody who wants to make a WAQF. What are the certain criteria that they would need to meet in order for that to happen?
Okay, so first of all, the person that's making the WAQF must be an adult, male or female.
Baligh, of course,
Baligh, yes. The person should own the wealth, shouldn't be borrowed. You should own whatever you're giving away. It should belong to you.
So you can't take out, for example, a loan or something, of course, an interest-free loan, because we're using Sharia aspects with regard. So this has to be wealth that they have accumulated by themselves.
Yes, it's yours, it belongs to you, and that is what you are dedicating. Whether it's your property or your money or jewelry or whatever you are giving, it must belong to you.
Sure.
You know, in terms of ownership. You shouldn't be borrowing to actually give, you know, or you shouldn't be giving a bonded property. It should be unfettered.
Sure.
It should be completely free of debt, completely free, that you could literally transfer the ownership. And that is a very important key point.
Sure.
That in terms of a waqf, where when you're giving this, you are actually transferring ownership from yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's another important point, which would be it's part of the condition of making a waqf as well. Then we would come to other issues like
with what can you make a waqf for? So does it have to strictly be cash, or can it be other aspects, halal aspects, of course?
Of course.
Yeah.
So what was very popular during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and where people had orchards and farms and so forth, they used to dedicate that. They used to dedicate their homes. So you could dedicate land, property, farmland. You could dedicate an apartment building that you may have. You may dedicate your house. You may dedicate money. Today you can dedicate some shares in your company, a share in your business. So as long as it's an asset. In terms of movable assets, yes, you could dedicate a car as well.
Sure. Okay.
You know, for use in charity organizations or whatever, or you dedicating this car. Remember that during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they dedicated, Khalid bin Walid dedicated horses.
Yes.
For the army, for the military.
Yes.
They dedicated swords, they dedicated armor. So those were all kind of movable assets that could be used.
Sure.
So some of the assets may have limited life, but it's not like a consumable asset. It's not consumable, and that's one of the big differences between waqf and other forms of charity as well.
Uncle Zainul, I want to touch on ownership. So if somebody wants to go ahead and actually give a waqf, but they're struggling to maybe accumulate the resources for it, where do we supposedly draw the line in terms of that? I ask this because maybe there is somebody who's listening saying, I'd love to give something, I don't have the money. So how can they go ahead and contribute a waqf, but making sure that it is done the right way, maybe within an ownership structure that they can have some sort of interest in?
Yeah, so basically the amount or the quantum of the corpus could be anything. You could make a waqf, from as little as a rand or a cent. I mean, the person that we have donors, WAQFs, that are pensioners that may donate 5 rands a month. So the quantum doesn't really matter as long as you are owning it. It belongs to you, and you don't have to give everything in one go.
Sure.
You could literally, as you have money or you have assets, you could contribute on a lifetime basis. Every month or every year you could be contributing something and build up your waqf, because ultimately because this is such a very strong cultural and Islamic concept of waqf, and because this was a concept that was spread throughout the Muslim world in such a big way, we would like to encourage people to do more and more in terms of waqf, and make it as part of our culture in this country and elsewhere as well.
Sure.
And this is becoming a trend and reviving over the past, you could say, 25 years now. That this notion is becoming more embedded in Muslim societies as we are talking now. So if you look at it, people can contribute whatever they want on a piecemeal basis, installment basis, as and when they have.
Sure. And then, Uncle Zainul, debt. for those who have maybe accumulated debt but want to contribute to the WAQF, where do we stand on that?
Okay, so as long as the item that you are contributing is something that you own,
Okay.
and you're not owing anything on that particular item, then, I mean, if I've got a car that I've purchased on an installment basis and I'm owing the bank, whatever, Islamic bank or whoever, I can't donate that property because it's a liability, somebody else. The critical part is that I must be able to transfer ownership to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once I make a waqf, it doesn't belong to me anymore. It's irrevocable. I can't cancel that waqf.
Sure, okay.
I can't sell that waqf. I can't gift it away. I can't put it in my will.
Yes.
As an inheritance to somebody, because now I've given it away. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
Sure.
under the management of the mutawalli. The mutawalli could be myself, could be my daughter, could be my son, could be somebody that I trust. So it's as long as I'm able to transfer that particular asset to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that sense, as making it a waqf, then it's out of my ownership.
Okay, we've just got a minute, Uncle Zainul, so I just want to touch on, of course, how can somebody make a WAQF? Of course, WAQF South Africa is one of those institutions where it can be done. But if somebody wants to make a WAQF, how can they go ahead and do it?
Okay, so I think it's one needs to have a niyyah. One needs to think about what would I like the WAQF to be used for.
Sure.
Now, it could either be used as for general purposes, or it could be designated for something. So WAQF South Africa, as you mentioned, may have a general WAQF where the distribution, the fruits can be used for various purposes as the need arises, and community needs change from time to time. And then one could dedicate it, say, for example, for education purposes, for scholarships, or for health purposes, for cataract operations, or for, like we've seen examples of where a person has dedicated a waqf for promoting calligraphy,
Yes.
or he wants to promote the language of Arabic.
Yes.
So you could designate your waqf for that purpose. So once you've established your niyyah, your purpose, you've established what you want to give, if it's big enough, you could prepare this waqf document.
Sure.
Otherwise, the organization that manages the waqf would be able to advise you anything further as to what you need to do, or because you'd need to transfer the property or transfer the asset into the waqf itself.
Sure. Well, after the break, are we going to continue the conversation with regards to WAQF, a game changer? We're going to be looking at historical examples and how they have shaped us to making WAQFs part and parcel of our daily lives. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. We are still on session 2, segment 2 now of WAQF, a game changer. Now we're going to look at historical aspects, and the list is endless from all parts of the globe, especially here in South Africa. And Uncle Zainul Kaji is going to really break it down for us as to how the first WAQF which was established and how that has now really expanded across the globe. Uncle Zainul, I mean, we look at the Kaaba. I mean, that was probably, one could say, the first WAQF when Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam established it. We look at Medina, when Masjid al-Nabawi was established, Darul Arqam was established, and that really did lay the foundation, did it for us now to have WAQFs as part and parcel, because we've spoken about niyyah, intention, how it was given, and the niyyah at the time was as pure as could ever be.
Absolutely. So if we look at our history, you mentioned the Kaaba, which is a few, maybe 1,000 years
Yes.
ago. Then Quba becomes a very significant first
Sure.
as a masjid, because the Prophet ﷺ is now migrating to Medina, the Hijrah,
Sure.
and he stops over in Cuba. And in Cuba is his family, actually,
Yes.
his in-laws. And they dedicate a piece of land, and he builds the mosque there, the first masjid.
Sure.
And then, of course, they go on to Medina, and in Medina, the mosque is built there. So those were like the earliest examples of mosques. But now they are situated in Medina, and this is where, like I mentioned earlier, that the Prophet ﷺ now is establishing various institutions.
Sure.
So one of the first institutions was, or the first waqf was the waqf of Umar ibn al-Khattab.
Yes, yes.
So again, when that verse "Lan tanalul birra hatta tunfiqu" is revealed, Umar ibn al-Khattab comes to the Prophet ﷺ, asks him for his advice. He tells him, "Look, I've got this orchard in Khaybar, which I've acquired. It's one of my most prized possessions. What do you advise me to do with it?" So the Prophet advised him, "Endow the land, endow the orchard, and dedicate its fruit."
Sure.
And that was the beginning of that particular waqf as perhaps the first social development.
Yes, yes.
The first commercial waqf, where the Prophet also said, you should not sell it. It cannot be inherited. It cannot be gifted.
Gifted, yes.
It now belongs to Allah. So that becomes a very significant first example of one of the greatest caliphs of Islam, and he makes that dedication. So of course at that time he wasn't the caliph, but he was a very important Sahabi of the Prophet ﷺ. Then you have the example of Uthman bin Affan. And this is an amazing example because right up to today, his waqf is still working. Apparently, there's a bank account in his name.
Till today.
Till today.
Yes.
His waqf produces like about 50 million riyals every year. Recently, when I visited Medina, I saw the hotel, the Uthman bin Affan Hotel. So that was part of his waqf as well.
Yes.
So his waqf started off with that well in Medina, the bir in Medina, the well in Medina, which he actually bought on the advice of the Prophet ﷺ from the previous Jewish owner.
Yes.
And he dedicated that well for free usage of anybody that wanted to use it. Yes. Then we have the example of one of the Sahabi as well, Abu Talha.
Yes.
Abu Talha, I think I mentioned as well that when this verse was revealed, again he comes to the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving this advice about endowing land, endowing your orchard, and dedicating the fruit to the various Sahaba. And this one to Abu Darda was also the same, which I related earlier on, where he asked the Prophet ﷺ to give his hand. And he said, "Is Allah asking us to give him a loan?" And he said, "Yes." Said, "Okay, I'm dedicating my orchard." He goes to the orchard, he sees his wife and children there, and he tells his wife and children that this orchard doesn't belong to us anymore, it belongs to Allah. And his wife tells him, "You've made a beautiful trade." And this is where the Prophet also said to him that your orchard in Jannah is going to be an orchard of pearls. It will be hanging out of your orchard. Beautiful. So an interesting example is also a rabbi.
Yes, I was just seeing that now.
Jewish rabbi.
Mukhayrik.
Yeah. Mukhayrik was a companion of the Prophet. He fought along the Prophet in the Battle of Uhud. Mukhayrik dedicated 7 orchards to the Prophet
MashaAllah.
in his will. He passed away. And the Prophet in turn dedicated those lands as waqfs as well. In addition to that, during the life of the Prophet, and at the end of his life as well, obviously we know that prophets leave nothing as inheritance.
Yes.
So all whatever he had, even his armor, his swords, was all dedicated as waqfs. We see Khalid bin Walid
Yes,
during radiallahu anhu, as a person who as a warrior, young warrior,
Yes.
dedicating his horses and armaments and so forth also as waqf for the jihad.
Uncle Zainul, I wanted to touch on Al-Azhar University because, of course, this was a waqf that was established so many years ago. But it was, if you look at the fruits of Al-Azhar now, the shuyukh that come from there, the hufaz that come from there, this is an example of a waqf that is just thriving and thriving after so many years.
Yeah, so, I mean, this was probably in the 6th or 7th centuries of Islam that Al-Azhar was established. And, I mean, right up to today, Al-Azhar has got thousands of students.
Yes.
Al-Azhar gives free education. Al-Azhar gives stipends to students.
Yes.
Al-Azhar runs many schools around the world. The British, during colonization, tried to actually demolish or close down a lot of the schools, but there was a lot of resistance, and somehow Al-Azhar was saved in terms of as an institution. Yes. And like you rightly point out, that, I mean, up to today, it produces hundreds and thousands of shuyukh, and the best qira'as come from, from Cairo and from the graduates of Al-Azhar. So that's a tremendous example of a waqf. We'll talk about what happened to the Al-Azhar in terms of nationalization and governments and interference and all of that as well. But essentially, it's a waqf. It's in existence for hundreds of years now and producing ongoing. So whoever's made that waqf, can you imagine the kind of reward and the thawab that they're getting on a perpetual basis?
We've got a few minutes, Uncle Zainul. I want to touch on South Africa, because there's so many nations, but of course WAQF South Africa being one of those institutions. How important is waqf in a country where it's not predominantly Muslim, but we are still able to instill this waqf, even making non-Muslims understand the power of it and its dedication to uplifting society and communities as a whole?
I think, South Africa gives us plenty of opportunities from where we came from in terms of apartheid and colonialism and so forth. Right from the beginning, the first waqf was made in Cape Town, Masjid al-Awwal, again, by a woman, Sarah van den Kaap. Subsequently, we find the waqfs made in Durban, the Grey Street Mosque, with all the surrounding shops and apartments and all of that, becoming self-sufficient. Then you find many others in Lenasia, Rustenburg. Of course, all the mosques. But what we have been seeing that we've been lacking in terms of the commercial waqfs.
Yes.
And that is where WAQF South Africa and others have also now begun to create waqfs and propagate the idea, advocate the idea that the waqf system is something that is part of our Islamic culture and civilization. Every masjid, every community, every family, every business, every corporation should actually be establishing a waqf. Because in this way, we create a society that is a benevolent society, an influential society, a society that is strong. Imagine if we have WAQF supporting schools that are, we said our universities in Islam, in Islamic cities, were free of fees. So fees must fall was something that we did centuries ago.
Yes.
We didn't have students paying fees and protesting about fees and all of that. So if we could provide society with free education, free quality education, or very low fees and so forth, providing clinics, providing other services, water, like we have a water crisis, electricity crisis. If you look at some of the examples of WAQFs, they were not only institutions,
Yes.
they were also roads and bridges and pavements and
It's infrastructure.
infrastructure,
Yes.
Water, electricity, housing. We have some amazing examples of some of the WAQFs that were made, even apartments for newlyweds,
Yes.
starter packs. So I think South Africa, again, gives us that opportunity. We have the means here. Whatever the case may be, I think we should be the forerunners, and we have been, actually,
Sure.
frankly speaking, and without any atom of pride. I think South Africa has been a leader in the whole WAQF system. As WAQF South Africa, we've been able to spread it in many other countries, and I think, especially in Muslim minority countries,
Yes.
I think the momentum is growing and the revival is taking place. But obviously, there has been a decline over years, and
Yes.
that is why we see the absence of these. There's also that the WAQF in Durban, the Lockhart WAQF, a tremendous WAQF that was created by a family in the 1930s.
Yes.
So can you imagine that WAQF is also runs schools, it runs various madrasas, supports various dawah centers, and even housing, even ambulances that it has donated to. So the kind of benefit that we can bring to South African society and lift the status of Muslims in this country, the WAQF system actually allows us to do that.
Okay. Uncle Zainu,
Inshallah.
we've come towards the end of session 2. Of course, session 3 and 4 will be occurring during the rest of this blessed month. For myself, Faraz Patel, and the rest of the team in Joburg, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.